Please take your seats and silence all cell phones. Today's closing keynote will begin momentarily. Please welcome Layla Lanier to the stage.
Good afternoon. My name is Layla Lanier, and for a quick visual description, I'm a tall black woman with big curly hair. I'm wearing a gray suit with multicolored shirt and brown shoes. I'm a second-year law student at the Syracuse University College of Law with a strong interest in disability law and civil rights. My background includes an undergraduate degree in deaf studies, where I learned American Sign Language, interned at Gallaudet University, and completed research about inaccessibility affecting the deafblind community. In law school, I'm a part of the Black Law Student Association as an acting executive secretary, the Disability Law Society Student Outreach Coordinator, and the Associate Articles Editor of the Syracuse Law Journal of Global Rights and Organizations. During a recent internship in disability law, I aided in litigation regarding complex legal issues such as homelessness, special education, and income discrimination. And in my free time, I'm also a Division I cheerleader for Syracuse. As I look ahead to my 3-year and beyond, I'm eager to learn from established professionals in this field and gain insight into the evolving challenges and opportunities within disability law. I welcome the chance to connect with leaders like you, exchange ideas, and explore potential mentorship or employment opportunities. Next, I want to thank Wells Fargo for their generous support as a visionary level sponsor of the Harkin Summit, helping to advance inclusion and equity for people with disabilities worldwide. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Jason Rosenberg and Andrew Holbrook from Wells Fargo. Andrew Holbrook is the Chief Accessibility Officer and Strategy and Planning Executive in diverse segments, representation, and inclusion at Wells Fargo. As the first person to hold this critical role, Andrew leads efforts to drive accessibility and inclusion across the company. His work in DSRI focuses on increasing diverse representation at all levels, fostering a more inclusive workplace, and expanding opportunities to better serve diverse customer segments and suppliers. We are honored to have Andrew with us today to share his insights on advancing accessibility and inclusion in meaningful and impactful ways. Jason Rosenberg is the head of public affairs at Wells Fargo. Jason joined the company in 2024 and leads Wells Fargo's corporate communications, corporate marketing, government relations, and public policy, philanthropy and community impact, and sustainability groups. As a member of Wells Fargo's operating committee, Jason plays a key role in shaping the company's strategic direction and public engagement. And on a fun note, Jason is also a proud graduate of Syracuse University. Go Orange! We are delighted to have him here today to share his expertise and insights. Please give a warm welcome to Andrew Holbrook and Jason Rosenberg.
Wow.
I've never clapped for part of my introduction before, but thank you, Lou. That was fantastic. So any Syracuse alum or student, we have to appreciate.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for the introduction. As I was listening to that, I was like, wow, that's impressive. I
sat down when Andrews was being talked about for as much work as he does for us. So.
Well, and then, first of all, let's just say thank you all. I'll start with a visual description. I'm Andrew Holbrook. I'm seated in a white chair. I'm a white male with graying hair, wearing a gray suit and a white shirt. I'm also wearing glasses. And I'll kind of kick this off, and Jason and I are gonna have some questions that we're gonna walk through, but let me just start with, it's an absolute honor to be here at the Harkin Summit. I'm hard of hearing. I was born hard of hearing, been wearing hearing aids since I was 7 years old, and as the gray hair will attest, I entered the workforce before the ADA existed. So I know how important the work that the Harkin Institute has done, and the work that Senator Tom Harkin has done. And I got to, exactly, Woo is right. I know firsthand, thank you. So, the work that is done by this group and by him it's been life-changing for me. I would not be here without him. So it's an incredible honor to be here, to be part of the Harkin Institute. It's also an incredible honor to be here with Jason Rosenberg, our head of public affairs. And so I guess, let me get it kicked off. So tell us a little bit about your role and what part it plays in Wells Fargo's commitment to people with disabilities.
Well, first, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's a pleasure to be here. As somebody who worked in the United States Senate when Senator Harkin was serving and admired what he did for his career, this is a truly remarkable for me on a personal level. I should also state in personal description, I apologize. I am seated in a white chair, blue suit, purple tie, and also rapidly graying hair that goes along with my tenure at Wells Fargo. One of the things that we do leading public affairs at Wells, we are in many ways the external facing arm of the company. Our 220,000 employees, more than 5,000 branches serving 1 in 3 households in the community. And what is unique about the way we approach our work is we are trying to serve every community. The way that we succeed with branches all across the country, commercial banking, investment banking, markets activities, wealth advisory, is focused on serving all communities. And there is no better gathering to talk about the community of people with disabilities than talking to the Harkin Institute. And this is a community that we want to serve and are seeking to serve. And the work that we do, both within the foundation, as well as, very importantly, that is not just philanthropic work, partnering with our business to serve an incredibly important segment. It's estimated that 1.3 billion, or 16% of civilians, have a disability, and that's probably an underrepresentation. I'm going to say this very much from a business standpoint. That's a community we want to serve. And the way that we go about our engagement is seeking to work with every community. And it's one of the things that we are trying to do, not just that direct engagement, but bringing the business into our communities and working from a holistic lens on behalf of Wells. Now, Andrew, you are the first Chief Accessibility Officer at Wells, an incredibly important job. Can you give us a little bit of a view on the issues you're focused on right now, the issues that you're seeking to improve accessibility for Wells Fargo employees, customers, clients, basically the entire community we serve?
Well, Jason, first of all, thanks. It is an honor to be the first Chief Accessibility Officer. Well, the way that I like to say it, though, I've only had this gig for 11 months, so, but now I'm like, wait, you've had the gig less than I have, and you never use that excuse, so I gotta stop using that from now on. But, from areas of focus, it's really, I talk about the 3 Ps. It is policy, it is partners, and it's products. And so the Harkin Institute is a great place where we connect with our partners around policy. And so that's why we continue to be involved with this. But it's also about products, and riffing a little bit on what you just said, which is serving our communities means offering products that are specific to the needs of the disability community. And I'm really proud of the work we do, both from Able Accounts, which I want to ask you a little bit about that in a minute, but our special needs trusts. So our special needs trust business is something which Wells Fargo is uniquely qualified to provide insights. Our financial advisors are trained on these products in a way that rivals any other financial institution that shares information about this. And I'll tell you, if you don't know what a special needs trust is, which it's surprised that not everybody in this community doesn't know about this, these products exist for people with disabilities. They protect people with disabilities access to the things that we need, whether they be health benefits, whether it be SSI benefits. This product exists, and Wells Fargo offers it because of this need, and so because of the community needs. So I'm just honored to be the first Chief Accessibility Officer of a company that does this. And so it's why I get really excited about talking about it. So I'm gonna chill out a little bit because I know we gotta get to a couple of things. And I guess, let me just ask you, Jason, and I'm gonna turn the page a little bit. So for many people with disabilities, financial insecurity is a significant issue. In fact, when I mentioned the ADA, financial insecurity was a big focus for that legislation. From your perspective, Jason, what are some of the ways that Wells Fargo's foundation and Wells Fargo in general is working to help improve financial well-being?
No, thank you for the question. When we think about the work we do, and we give away about $300 million a year, which we're proud to do, one of the key tenets of the work is through the financial health pillar. And we do, in a big piece of that, is our work, our disability community focused work in that financial health pillar. Now, the main priority and our engagement, because it is not us saying the way we think we can help, it's partnering with key communities on making sure that we have true impact with the work that we are doing. And the focus of that is moving people from financial insecurity to financial security protection and transfer. I mean, it really is something that we are trying to do that is consistent with so much of the other work. Now, Able Accounts, which you mentioned, and obviously tax advantage savings and investment accounts specifically for people with disabilities are a key product that is available. The problem is people don't know about them.
Yeah.
This is something that was a landmark piece of legislation which turns 10 tomorrow. 10 years it was passed and signed into law, 10 years tomorrow.
Exactly.
And the problem is we need to be doing a better job collectively on making sure people are aware that they're available. We see this in our conversations with wealth advisors. We see this in conversations, with partners. And our key partners here are the National Association of State Treasurers and the National Disability Institute that are seeking to expand understanding and awareness of Able Accounts. Now, I want to make sure that you can add on here. This is something that you spend a lot of time on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one thing that I like to share is that when it comes to Able Accounts, these are game changers, if you will, just in terms of accumulating wealth within the community. But it's also something which, these are not Wells Fargo products.
Nope.
And yet we train our bankers, our financial advisors to teach their customers and clients about these products because of their importance. And to Jason's point, we serve our communities first. And that's one of the things that we're excited to be part of the Harkin Institute, but also excited about some other things that we'll be talking about here. And I'm doing a quick time check. We have 2 minutes.
Oh, we got to go quick.
We got to do it quick.
Okay, we'll go quick.
So with it being, the 10th anniversary, I guess we've got some news to announce today, don't we?
We do, but I actually want to give a statistic which I think we may miss sometimes. When the bill that the ABLE Act was included in passed the House of Representatives, 404 members of the United States House of Representatives voted to pass this. You cannot find 404 members of the House of Representatives to say today is Wednesday. It does not happen. The alignment and the agreement on the importance of this cannot be understated. And with that, and I think from the Wells Fargo perspective, we want to announce that we are giving $2.3 million focused on promoting ABLE accounts and providing specialized financial coaching to people with disabilities. We're going to be doing this splitting between the National Association of State Treasurers and the National Disability Institute. This is work that we think is critically important, that we make sure people are aware and take complete advantage of this phenomenal opportunity that has support in a place where support does not typically exist.
Well, and woohoo! So, and Jason, I know you, thank you. One, $2.3 million, huge investment, if you will, in financial health education within the disability community. And I know I'm excited, the Accessibility Office, we're ecstatic about all of this. And I know that I hope that, everybody else shares our just wonderful joy about this. Now, I guess when it comes to the work ahead, I know creating a more accessible, more financially secure space. And yes, oh my gosh, I guess this is the time check. 20 seconds, the lights go out. I'm real excited about this. I'm also excited about what this is going to do for the community. And so with that, I think this is the
We're getting played off by the Oscars.
We got to get off the stage.
We're getting played off.
So apparently we're being played off. But Jason, I want to thank you personally for being here and being part of this and sharing this announcement and really putting forth the effort to put this investment together.
Well, because it was your... Thank you, Andrew. The last thing I want to say is, please tell us what more we can do. Our colleagues, many of whom are here today, the work that we can do in key communities is going to be done in partnership with so many of you. We have the incredible thought leaders in the disability community that is here today. If there are things that we should be thinking about with our size and scale, let us know. Tell us what we can be doing more, and we want to be continuing to serve additional communities. And frankly, they are our customers. When they succeed, we succeed. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please welcome Harper McKenzie to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Harper McKenzie, and I'm here to introduce our final keynote speaker of the day. For a visual description, I'm a young white woman with long brown hair and glasses. I'm wearing a black and tan striped sweater. I'm a master's student of education at Syracuse University in upstate New York, where I'm studying higher education with an emphasis on disability cultural work within student affairs. I'm privileged to work at the Syracuse University Disability Cultural Center, which is one of the first and only centers of its kind in the world. At the Disability Cultural Center, we prioritize promoting disability as diversity and supporting college students as they develop their personal sense of disability identity. We work hard to support students so that they can go out and do all the amazing employment opportunities that people like you are leading and making possible. I'm extremely passionate about disability within education, particularly higher education, and I'm looking to move into this field full-time when I graduate next spring. So if anyone in this room is working in this field, I would love to connect, I would love to collaborate, and I could honestly talk about disability cultural work in higher education for hours, so I'm happy to do that with anyone who's interested. Which is why I'm so excited to get to introduce our keynote speaker for this final session of the day, President Cordano of Gallaudet University. Roberta Bobby Cordano is president of Gallaudet University here in Washington, D.C. She's the university's fourth deaf president and first female president. She's been in office since January 1st, 2016, and she's brought new energy and transformational leadership to the role, leading strategic planning, academic initiative, and new approaches to higher education service and delivery.
She's prioritized language vibrancy and the university's contribution to the deaf and signing ecosystem by creating economic and leadership opportunities for deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind individuals. As a seasoned administrator and leader, Cordano brings skills and experience built both in traditional and non-traditional settings. Lastly, I'd like to thank Microsoft for their leader-level sponsorship of this summit, and I'd of course like to thank President Cordano for being here to speak to us today. Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to provide a visual description of myself. I am a short woman. I like to say mid-aged or older. I don't know what I qualify for these days. And I have a brownish hair, and I'm wearing brown glasses, as well as a blue suit. And I also have navy blue shoes on as well. So I think that provides a sufficient description of myself, but I did want to provide a few comments before I start. First, with Layla. She actually went to Gallaudet before she went to Syracuse. So Jason and Andrew and Harper, I just wanted to say that I am so proud of that. And then Jason and Andrew, thank you so much for your support of our community and the work that you're doing here. I really appreciate the two of you being here as well. Harper, I'm so excited to hear that you're doing this work in higher education, and we need people like you that are going into this field. So now I think the time is shorter than I had originally planned. I'm standing here figuring out how can I deliver a speech that was intended to be longer now than the time remaining. So if we do go over time, my apologies in advance, but I will try to make sure that I rein in my presentation so that it is as comprehensive as I originally planned, but sticking to the time. So first, to the Harkin Summit, I wanted to acknowledge Senator Harkin for his leadership and all of his hard work. He had founded this summit to be able to bring us all together with a special emphasis and focus on policy. His leadership has truly transformed our community all across the globe. And for us, in the deaf community specifically at Gallaudet University, he's been considered a close friend of ours because he has a deaf brother and he has a personal story that has impacted our ability to be able to lead at Gallaudet. It has had a positive impact on me being able to show up and lead as president, so I do want to extend my gratitude to Senator Harkin and his support of this very important summit. Oh, I didn't realize you're here. There you are. Thank you so much. I am so grateful for you and your work. So there are 4 things that I plan to cover today here with you, and these are the points that I want you to leave with after hearing my presentation today. The first one is belonging and equity. The second is about the concept of deaf gain. The third is the sign language economy. And then I also will be talking about sign language equity. So I wanted to make a point about employment as it relates specifically to deaf people and comparing that to people with disabilities in general. The statistics from the National Deaf Center, or NDC, indicates that 54% of deaf individuals are employed compared to 60% of people who have a disability, and then 70% of those who are non-disabled in hearing. So 54% for the deaf community. And we are lagging behind other communities. And I wanted to share a concept with you all here today that I think will help us to improve the quality of the conversations that we have, that will continue to elevate the work for people who are deaf, deafblind, and those who have additional disabilities and are deaf. So for the sake of time, I will refer to that collective group as the deaf community. And I think it's a wonderful way to be able to refer to our community and the diversity in which is a part of our community. So first, employment is a challenge of our community, and within the deaf community, we are also having conversations a great deal about the concept and the topic of underemployment. We estimate that over 70% of deaf people within the workforce are underemployed. And they are hitting the glass ceiling. And we are here not just to talk about the pipeline to employment, it's also about once they are in employment opportunities, that they have the ability to be able to have a career mobile opportunity and to experience career mobility. We know that these numbers are not acceptable. So then what are some of these game changers that will then lead to a different pathway and the hope for change in our future. So what I would present to you here today is that we must broaden our current framework. Our framework of accessibility and the concept of inclusion, which is a word that I'm not fond of, and I think that that's a conversation for another day and another time. But we need to broaden this framework to be sure that the framework in which we're using, that we are also looking at curating a culture of belonging and equity in our workplaces and in our communities and all the various settings in which we are in. So the idea is that if we're able to curate that sense of belonging and equity, everyone who's in that environment will feel connected, not just the person or people who have a disability. So to be able to change our lives, we need everyone else's lives to be changed to where everyone feels welcomed, that they belong, and that sense of equity. And that we can get to that place to where we're able to work alongside each other, especially in our working communities. So the sense of belonging is really what's fundamental. It's a fundamental element of our human condition. And it's important as food and water. Equity is different than equality. And there's a wonderful way that I typically will describe equity as it relates to equality, and what the difference is that equality is what's giving everyone the same shoes. That's the concept of equality. But equity is giving everyone a pair of shoes that fit that individual. Do I need to say that again, or does that make sense? So for me, to make it simple, is that belonging is about feeling connected to other people who are in an environment. And equity is about the actions that the environment takes in which we work. And it's those two concepts together that set us up for success. And I believe that we cannot achieve belonging and having a sense of belonging without addressing equity, and we can't address equity without first having belonging. And at Gallaudet University, we have now since hosted 2 belonging and equity in action summits. And these summits have been designed intentionally by inviting a smaller group of individuals to come together, distinguished leaders, senior leaders of large multinational companies and other types of organizations. And the way that we have designed our summits is quite fascinating, because most of the time when you have a conference and you bring people together, the number of people who have a disability is smaller in comparison to the rest of the people who are attending. But our summit at Gallaudet is quite different, to where we make sure that at least half of the room is filled with people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or deaf-blind, and the guests that we invite from these organizations and companies most likely don't have a disability. But they're now finding themselves in a setting to where they have the first-hand experience of being in a majority signing environment. This is where they're able to see a sense of belonging in action, where half of the room is made up with people who are using a different language to communicate. And they have to figure out how to connect with the people who are there. So that's been a part of our experience at these last 2 summits, to be able to see how can we change our workplaces? What ideas can they actually bring to us, and that we can further develop new metrics, new strategies, and new practices for the workplace? I know we're still in its infancy of what we're looking to be able to do, but this learning will continue as we engage and host more summits to come. So now, related to our work with belonging and equity, there are a few key concepts that I wanted you to hold. The first is the concept of cohort hiring. So for employees to be able to thrive, the hiring processes need to change from being individualistic to where we're doing individual hiring, but then now doing cohort hiring. And the reason why I say that is because doing cohort hiring will prevent people from feeling like they're the lonely only. I don't know if you go to many workplaces to where you have deaf individuals who talk about the fact that they are the lonely only, the only deaf person in that environment, in that organization. And we see that happen with women. We see that with people of color, where they are that lonely only. And we know that when you are that lonely only, it creates an isolating experience. That quite often has an impact on people's ability to be able to engage in their work, and it quite often impacts their performance. Deaf people do not thrive when they are the lonely only. And the second concept that I wanted to mention, and this specifically relates to the deaf community and those who use sign language, is the concept of language equity. So the concept of language equity is really tied to cohort hiring. And the way that that's true is that if you are the only person who uses sign language in a workplace, that person who uses sign language to communicate is often provided an interpreter. But who else is using that person's language? Who else is able to share and brainstorm using that same language with that person? And we know that as deaf people who gather and work together, we truly thrive in those environments. Gallaudet University is a prime example of that. And there's more that I will talk about as it relates to that later. But that whole concept of what organizations and companies should think about is that you can't have the lonely onlys or one individual in an environment that may not feel connected to the rest of the people who are there, and they may not be able to thrive and be able to provide their way of thinking that would really enhance the work that's at play. Cohort hiring supports the visibility and the vibrancy of sign language. I don't know if you've seen this before, and I should actually say how many people from Gallaudet are here, whether you're an alum, a family member, or a friend. I mean, it's extraordinary when you look across the room. It inspires me because I don't feel alone. And so that whole idea of being in a signing environment, you can see even in this environment how many people are using sign language to communicate, and you're able to see us quite visually. But when you have a person who is the lonely only, you don't often see that language being used. You may see it happening with an interpreter, but that interpreter is not necessarily representative of us as a deaf community and as deaf people. So we really need to shift our thinking as employers and as employees and what it is that we're looking for and what we're asking for. And the third concept is about representation as well as upward career mobility. At Gallaudet, we have worked so hard to be able to walk the walk. And many of you know, and this is true for Senator Harkin, he knows that when we had the protest in 1988, when we fought for representation for the presidency at Gallaudet University, how many of you were here and remember what had happened in 1988 in that protest? And then you had Dr. I. King Jordan, who became our first deaf president. That was 124 years after Gallaudet was founded. And I am now the fourth deaf president of Gallaudet. And I came in, 152 years after Gallaudet was founded? I don't know, I might be a year off with that figure. But what's interesting is that when I had interviewed for the job in 2016, people were telling me during the interview process, they say, well, you need to think about when is the executive team that reports to the president also going to be made up of deaf people? They wanted to see representation at all levels of the organization, including those leadership roles. And so when I came in as president, the executive team that I had inherited was made up of mostly hearing individuals, 2 of them who could sign fluently, and I was the only person of the executive team who was deaf. So 2 could sign fluently. The rest of them couldn't understand me at all, and they had to rely on the use of interpreters to be able to communicate with me. And I am proud to share today that I know that when the deaf community tells me that they are going to protest about something, I definitely pay attention, right? And I'm seeing here sitting Senator Harkin nodding. So the warning was there, and it was clear. That signal was clear. And I am so proud to share with you that our executive team at Gallaudet, we have 12 individuals who are on our executive team. 80% of them are deaf. Approximately 80% of them are deaf, and about 20% of them are hearing, and everyone signs and is fluent in sign language. And we weren't the majority deaf executive leadership team until 2022. And that was the first time in Gallaudet's history where we did not need to have interpreters any longer in those meetings, where everyone could communicate with me directly. So this is a call, not just for Gallaudet to do this work, because our community is not just asking for Gallaudet to take this on. It's really all of our organizations that need to engage in this. Those of you who represent and provide services to our community, who benefit from products that are sold to people who have a disability, it's on all of us to do the same. The concept of a lonely only in upper management and leadership is no longer acceptable. And at Gallaudet and the deaf community, they told me time and time again that having the lonely only as a deaf president of a university is not enough. The rest of the leadership team also needs to be deaf. And I can tell you that the quality of the experience that we have with the executive team, they felt that now not having interpreters, that they were able to engage even more so. Our conversations had improved, our ideas were able to improve, and we all felt more connected because of having that experience. And there are so many benefits that come with this. And that's true for many organizations and companies when that's the case. So I wanted to encourage you to think about, if you have the lonely only, start thinking about how you can address that. And be insistent about representation, because representation matters. We are the only organization of our size that exists in the world. I know here in the United States, it's true, but I'm pretty sure it's true for the rest of the world too, but where you have a majority group of individuals who are deaf or disabled who are running a $200+ million operating budget running a university or an organization. You know how many people said that that was impossible, to have deaf people running a $200 million+ organization? And we've just finally proved that. And I think it's time for us to be able to have other companies and organizations do the same. I am more passionate about this than I expected today. All right. So the second concept that I wanted to talk about here is about the concept of deaf gain, or G-A-I-N. I don't know if you've heard of that concept before. Has anyone heard of deaf gain before in this concept? Okay, there are people who are close to the community who might know about this. So I'll share with you what this concept is about. So those of you who might know about it already, you'll have to just bear through this. So you might have heard obviously you've heard the term hearing loss before, right? That's often talked about. And what we associate with the words hearing loss is a deficit or a lack of something. And that is associated with being deaf. So where we can't hear music, other negative framing like, well, your speech might not be great, to where you need to improve your speech so people can understand you, or you have to rely on interpreters, so isn't your life very inconvenient because of the fact that you have to rely on interpreters? So, hearing loss causes delay with readings, or, I don't know, there are other stories where, we've heard people say, well, deaf people have a 4th grade reading level. I don't even know if that's true, but that's what people often say. So there's a lot of negative input and language that's being used when people encounter the deaf community and refer to the deaf community. So it's being seen from more of a pathological point of view, or what a person might lack in terms of their hearing. But we have wonderful scholars at Gallaudet. And it's kind of funny because there's actually 2 of them who've been working together on this concept, one who's hearing and one who's deaf. And they were traveling to Europe, and they were doing some international travel, and they were talking about the fact that this hearing colleague was talking about the deaf colleague and saying, wow, he actually has people who he knows in these other countries. He has a free place to stay because of that. He's able to find other community members in the deaf community when he travels to international destinations. And that's true of our community, that we have those connections to where they will roll out the red carpet and they will invite us in and embrace us with open arms and treat us as if we are their family. So that was one thing that hearing professor had observed about the deaf professor. And one other thing is that they realized that it's not the loss that's significant. It's about the fact that our world has something to gain from the deaf community and the way of being deaf. So if we think about all the qualities that make deaf people's way of being so extraordinary and so wonderful, and how that benefits our world, it's a pretty radical concept for us to think about. So for example, deaf people, quite naturally, are much more observant, and they can notice things visually. And it's because of the fact that we have to be. And it's been said that deaf people often in the workplace are much more focused because they're not distracted by the noise in the environment. They're using their eyes to think about to really focus on the task at hand. But hearing people don't have that same skill set. If somebody walks by or makes a noise or they're talking, people will often get distracted if they're hearing. But deaf people will just continue to work and not be distracted by that. When you think about the spatial skills of deaf people, the visual spatial perception that we have, especially for deaf individuals who've been signing from birth, the brain is able to make the connections that allows us to be able to enhance or expand our peripheral vision. We have better spatial recognition, and if a hearing child has that same experience as that deaf child, their experience of music is enhanced in being able to read music and even play music. And one other quality that deaf people exhibit is that they're often loyal employees. We have heard time and time again from employers why they love to have deaf people working for them. And it's because of the fact that there's that loyalty that's there. 40% of those 54% of them who are employed have that experience because they know that they don't have those career opportunities or the mobility opportunities that other people have. So they will continue to be loyal. They will adapt to whatever it is that the company or environment needs because in other places, they don't often have that opportunity. I know it's sad to say, but it's true. And that's the reason why they're often very loyal to where they're working. So when deaf talent is valued, deaf people typically feel more engaged. And then you'll see their best work being showcased. And the companies will benefit from the innovation that it's connected to. So I wanted to invite you to read a little bit more about the concept of deaf gain, to think about your experience of people who are deaf. Do you focus it on more of like a deficit model? Or are you thinking about, oh, how do we actually benefit from the deaf way of being? If you say that deaf people can't, my mother always said, no, this is the sign for can't. She said, do the opposite. Deaf people can. It's beautiful when you try to describe that in ASL. It's very visual. My mom would say, no, can't is not a word in our family when it comes to being deaf. And there are ways in which the world benefits from us being deaf. And we as deaf people can do anything. Yeah, and I'm trying to think about what I want to continue to share about or what I might need to take out. But I wanted to shift to a different concept here, the next concept that I wanted to talk about. And this is about the sign language economy. So when I got to Gallaudet in 2016, the deaf community had already been talking about the idea of an ecosystem of sorts, an economic ecosystem that we have been building and where we've been able to generate wealth from. The different connections of what has been made from hiring people within the deaf community, which I have to commend you here at the Harkin Institute, the summit for hiring different deaf-owned and disability-owned businesses, investing in the community and hiring them for work events such as this. That is really a part of what we're referring to when we talk about the sign language economy and what we're looking to do. We're trying to really grow our ecosystem to now being more about the sign language economy. And the reason why I talk about the sign language economy is one, because I'm a college president. I've actually gotten tired of hearing other college presidents boast and brag with me and others about the fact that, oh, their university contributes X amounts of dollars to their region and what their economic footprint is. So when I was listening in, I'm like, well, what is my story as the president of Gallaudet? And how do we contribute? Well, that brought me to a place where I actually took that on as a challenge and realized that we have a sign language economy. And how we go about measuring this economy is that we measure it by counting the number of places and spaces that require the skill set of the use of sign language. How many jobs require that a person knows sign language? When you think about the people who are here in the front row, the interpreters, right? That's a part of the sign language economy. They are hearing people who have jobs because of the use of sign language. Teachers who teach deaf students who use sign language to communicate, that's also a part of this economy. If you're at Gallaudet and you're a deaf chef, or you work in the kitchen, or you're a faculty member, these are all jobs that require the use of sign language and being fluent in sign language. So this is a concept that hopefully people are following with how it is that we are able to count the positions, places, and spaces to where the use of sign language is required. So Dr. Tawny Holmes, who happens to be here in the audience, it was her, myself, and Dr. Khadija Rashid we were presenting, was it in 2019? Was that right, Tawny? We gave the first presentation at an international conference about the whole concept of the sign language economy, looking at what it is that we have done as a community. And we found the data, and as best that we could, and without having to do formal research at this point, but I think that that's going to be the next step for us, is to do some formal research, that our best estimate, based on the data that we were able to collect and looking at various heat maps, the sign language economy in the United States is worth, guess how much? At least $3 billion. And we believe, if we were to look into this, that all of the different job opportunities that exist, it would probably be closer to 10 billion. So again, this is research that we need to do. But when you think about a $10 billion economy, because of deaf gain concepts, because of the use of sign language, we are creating wealth everywhere we go. Within the sign language economy, we welcome other people to join it and to be able to create wealth and to profit from it. Wells Fargo with Andrew and Jason, right? There's profit that we can share with you in this economy. And I wanted to take a little bit of time just before I close here to focus on the sign language economy, but also how that relates to sign language equity. For years, many of us have been trying to identify the experience of going into a room and realizing that everybody else uses a spoken language, and you're there as a deaf person with an interpreter, always kind of experiencing that deficit, always experiencing something less because of the fact that you don't speak, because you're not able to interact in the same way with the other people who are in that space. That's the feeling that we have as deaf people when we walk into certain rooms. So it's not about the fact that we are hearing or deaf, it's about the environment and what the environment looks like, that it doesn't recognize the parity or the equity of sign language compared to English or another spoken language. It's not often seen as being on par to a spoken language, and it's because people within the medical profession have often been thinking about encouraging families not to sign with their deaf children, because without defining it, they know that everywhere in the world that it's a spoken language dominant society. So that fear runs high that a person's child will not be able to participate in a dominant language environment if they don't know a spoken language. But when you have sign language that's seen as being on par with a spoken language, that creates a positive experience for everyone. And when I met with Senator Harkin, he's a US Senator, well, a previous US Senator, by which I wish you were still there. When I met him, I had a very different experience because he could use sign language to communicate with me. He didn't think that he signed well enough, but he used sign language to communicate with me, which told me that he recognized that it has equity in our interaction. Sorry that I'm picking on you here too much, but you're here in the audience, so I just wanted to use you as an example. So you have a US Senator who did that with me, and then Congress all of a sudden became more accessible to me because of that. And I have more hope than now when I go and I meet with people in Congress. That spirit is still alive because of that interaction that I've had with him. And the biggest symbol that sign language, or I guess what is the biggest symbol that we don't have sign language equity currently? I don't know if you all know what it is, but it's the US Census. The US Census allows you to check off the languages in which you speak in your home environment. Even in Minnesota, for example, for where I come from, there are 91 different languages that are spoken and used in that state. But when you think about it and you go through the list, guess what? It doesn't list American Sign Language. It doesn't list Mexican Sign Language. There is not Quebec, French Sign Language or Quebec that's used. So there's no sign language that exists on that form. And if you're not counting it, guess what? We're seen to as not existed. When you think about under-counting people in the disability community, we don't even know where our children are in the birth through 21 population and in our school systems. So if the US Census is not recognizing American Sign Language, we cannot have equity in our sign language as it compares to a spoken language. That's just one prime national example to give you to show firsthand what our fight needs to be about. And we need all of you in your various work environments to be able to give that deference and that recognition and to celebrate Even provide classes to your employees, or maybe teach them some sign language, give them online opportunities to learn ASL just because of the fact, even when people say good morning in sign language, that provides me the signal that I am welcome in an environment and that sign language is recognized as being on par. You don't have to be fluent in the language, you can just gesture and point, like this. Just pointing to somebody. That shows me that you're actually willing to use a visual communication system, and that provides me even more access as a deaf person when I go into these types of spaces. And I would like to close with a story about Gallaudet and the relationship here with Washington, D.C. You know, I am so excited to share with all of you that there have been changes that I've seen here in D.C. since I've started as president. You know, when I first arrived, when I first came on board, I don't know if you know that Gallaudet has a fence all around its campus, the 99 acres of our campus. And if you drive by on Florida Avenue, you actually might miss it because of that. So what we did was we put up a big banner on 6th Street that said, "We are a signing community." And that's really to send the signal that we are signing on our community's property on this campus, on that beloved 99 acres of land that we have here in DC. So then, at some point in time, you know, they had that signing Starbucks on 8th Street store, but before it became the signing Starbucks, it actually wasn't doing quite well. So there was an employee who worked at that Starbucks and went to national headquarters and said, well, why don't you actually make it a signing store, given the fact that you have a deaf and signing, you know, community in this neighborhood? And that everything that they would do and sell all would be done through the use of sign language in that particular store. So they had pitched that concept to headquarters. It actually was first invented in Malaysia. They actually came up with that concept before, and Starbucks knew that the coffee shop in Malaysia, you know, had people who were going to that Starbucks store more than others that were in that area because of the fact that they were a signing store. So they said, well, why not do it on 8th Street? So they resurrected one of the most profitable, and it has now become one of the most profitable Starbucks stores that they have within their network. So when you think about the sign language, you know, sign language equity, sign language economy, thinking about how this all comes to be and how it relates to that, you know, thinking about, wow, we finally had a signing Starbucks store on 8th Street. And then shortly thereafter, you had the signing Apple store at the Carnegie Library. And what do they call it? Their flagship store. So they opened a flagship store that was also a part of the signing community, given the fact that Gallaudet was close by. So they decided to hire deaf people at their store. Now, when you go into their Apple store, you will always see somebody who's there who can sign. And if you even call Apple for services, they have people who are able to sign virtually with you as well. When you think about Gallaudet and its location just right around the corner, I was just thinking about Apple being willing to do that in this community, given the fact of our proximity to them. We've now since seen that with Trader Joe's. They have opened up a store near Gallaudet and have hired many of our deaf students who now work there. One of my favorite places to shop is there because the students are always excited to give me their working discount. So it's that 20% discount that I get as Gallaudet president. I probably shouldn't be saying that here publicly. But yeah, Trader Joe's is close by. We also have Target, who set up a new store in Ivy City. They've also hired our, you know, deaf people from our community and from our campus who are now working there. So another concept that we can add to the sign language economy about measuring the economy and the use of sign language and thinking about equity and deaf gain is also thinking about how this all relates to the economic footprint, or what Gallaudet's footprint is as it relates to what we have here in our neighborhood and how it relates to signing. I think that, wasn't it that Wells Fargo, do you guys have another store that's close to us or will be close to us? We'll actually help you set that up to make sure that you have all three of these concepts within your store. So this gives you an idea of what's possible, that when you have a company or a nonprofit, you need to ask yourself, what is our sign language footprint that we have? And if you don't have one, you might want to build one. We are everywhere. And now, I do want to bring it back to talking about deaf gain again and mention the fact that we have people with different disabilities in this room. And I don't think that we have one specific story about how we benefit or gain from disabilities necessarily. But I think that it's just really important for us to continue to shift the narrative and think about this from the framework of how do we all benefit? How do we all contribute? Neurologically, psychologically, physically, or whatever disability that we might have, and name how it is that we provide that benefit. We need to start naming that gain with the different disability communities. And this idea has come up before about how much value that people with disabilities create for the world. When you think about Microsoft, they actually got very brilliant and smart about this. They knew that if we had focused on accessibility and services and technology that are usable by people with a disability, they will make a profit. And they were right. And many companies have been doing the same thing. I mean, Wells Fargo, you've been talking about doing the same thing. But what my question is, for all of us, and it's actually a story that I had just heard about the other day, where there was a deaf man who was just so well-revered and regarded in our community. He was so proud to tell me the other night that he had started a video relay company with $150,000 to his name. And it actually just sold for $490 million to a public company in France. So I had asked him, when he shared this, I said, well, how much did you get of that? And he said, nothing. 0. He said, the people who all bought it are hearing. And we created $490 million of wealth, but none of that came back to the deaf community. I don't see that an endowment from them yet, from the university. I don't see people buying beautiful homes with the profit that they had from the sale of that company. I mean, my understanding is that there are a few deaf executives in that company that will get some sort of that money, but it probably would be less than 10 individuals. $490 million? In terms of financial compensation, I mean, something is wrong with this picture when the wealth doesn't come back to our community, when things are not coming back to places like Gallaudet that will then really protect the future of people who are in our community, those who are brilliant academic students who are going into these various workspaces and your workspaces. We've been fighting for that for the deaf community, and we need to continue to fight for that for the disability community. Who actually uses and makes a wheelchair? Who's paying for that? We are not getting our fair share of the profit from our own experience in the world to where we need certain equipment and access to things. We are not getting our share to that. And I think now is time for us to fight for that economic wealth that needs to be created and given back to the disability community. So wake up and start fighting for that. That wealth generation needs to happen, and it needs to be voluntarily given back to our community to which it actually came from. And I think that that's enough for me to say. And to close, I wish I had more time here. I would share more stories with you, but I think that that's sufficient for today. And again, thank you all for coming.
Okay, hello everybody. This is Daniel Van Sant speaking again. I want to thank all of you for being with us through the first day of the Harkin Summit and hope to see all of you here tomorrow. I want to make a couple quick announcements before we wrap up for the day. So first, I want to make sure to thank another sponsor and thank the Kessler Foundation for their friend-level support this year. I think I saw Elaine somewhere over here from the Kessler Foundation, who's been a longtime supporter, so thank you for your support again this year. I want to let people know of a slight change to the panel schedule for tomorrow. Session 8F in your paper agenda is not accurate. So there has been a change in the panel for 8F, which is now going to be Beyond Compliance, Embedding Disability Inclusive Innovation with the All-In Method by Dr. Amy Abernoff. So it's incorrect in your paper agenda, and it's going to be switched to that content by Dr. Abernoff. It is updated correctly on the digital agenda. So I wanted to make sure that there wasn't any confusion there as you're selecting sessions for tomorrow. I learned today that it is Judy Human's birthday today. So I regret that I was not able to celebrate that this morning when I introduced Special Advisor Minkara. But I think we can all say that this is a way that Judy would have wanted to celebrate her birthday, and if she were here, she would be here. So I want you all to join me in wishing Judy a happy heavenly birthday. Thank you. Okay, so as I said, this is just day one. We have a full other day of amazing speakers, students, panels, everything all over again. So I do hope that you will join us tomorrow as well. Remember that check-in starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we would ask all of you to join us down here for breakfast. We'll have breakfast down here on floor -3. So get here for check-in and breakfast, and the sessions start at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you, and we'll all see you in the morning.